Tonight, thousands in Gaza pushed to the brink of starvation as aid agencies plead for more help. Water runs out, disease runs rampant, and the war shows no signs of letting up.
Reminiscent of the worst possible times in history.
Israel allowing more fuel into the Strip as loved ones bid a final farewell to a soldier held by Hamas. A record-setting drug bust.
It is the single largest seizure of crystal methamphetamine and powder cocaine.
The $90 million seizure, and why some say it's merely a dent. Plus, all roads lead to the Hammer.
I came back specifically so I didn't miss this.
Festivities kick off ahead of the 110th Grey Cup.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Heather Wright.
Good evening. Hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza are nearing starvation, according to the United Nations. Today, fuel shortages halted aid shipments and blacked out some communications as Palestinian network operators say they are struggling to power phone and internet systems. Israel released this video today, claiming to show the destruction of an Islamic Jihad weapons plant, as signs suggest a ground invasion into the south may be imminent. At Al-Shifa Hospital, soldiers spent a third day combing through the complex, looking for more evidence to prove its claim that Hamas was operating from within the hospital. And it was near Al-Shifa that the bodies of two Israeli hostages have been found, a 19-year-old soldier and a 65-year-old grandmother who was battling cancer.
She was everything to me, to her family.
Israel said today it will allow some fuel into Gaza to help power water and sewage plants as concerns of the spread of disease grow. CTV's Vanessa Lee starts us off.
Desperate Gazans line up for food, fearing a slow death. The humanitarian crisis is growing more urgent by the hour. Aid agencies say starvation is imminent, and so is the spread of disease. They estimate 70% of the population is drinking contaminated water. What has happened to us? There is no water, no electricity. We are sleeping on the floor and our children are suffering, she says. This Canadian family says the decision to leave their home in Gaza was excruciating. Forced to pick between bringing their two daughters to safety and leaving their parents and other family members behind.
We have a huge feeling of guilt and shame that we left everyone that we love.
Israeli troops are meticulously searching Gaza's largest hospital for the third day in a row after releasing this video showing a tunnel shaft they say leads to a Hamas command post under the complex.
And this is where they choose to hide everything.
Hamas and medical officials are denying the claims. The United Nations is calling on Israel to allow their teams in to investigate. The U.S. is confident there are tunnels under the hospital.
So this is one of the monstrous practices that Hamas engages in.
Abducted by Hamas on October 7th, today Israeli soldier Corporal Noah Marciano was laid to rest. Her body was found near the Al-Shifa Hospital. She was just 19 years old. Her mother says, "We're asking for your forgiveness. You protected us, but we failed in protecting you." Ottawa says another 9 people with links to Canada made it out of the Gaza Strip today, as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continues to urge Israel to exercise maximum restraint. Heather.
All right, Vanessa Lee in Montreal, thank you. Police in Toronto are investigating a bomb threat made to a Jewish high school, the second time the school has been threatened in just over a month. Hundreds of students at Tannenbaum Community Hebrew Academy were sent home today after the school administration received a message late this morning. Police say the threat appears to be unsubstantiated. Across North America and indeed the world, there has been a surge in hate crimes against both Jewish and Muslim communities. Yesterday, an Islamic community center and mosque north of Toronto was also evacuated because of a bomb threat. 21 leaders of Pacific Rim nations are now on their way home after the APEC summit in San Francisco wrapped up today. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held meetings with 6 different nations but is facing questions about the meetings that didn't happen. CTV's Judy Trinh reports from San Francisco.
Canada's trade with China is more than $100 billion a year, yet the Prime Minister only interacted with President Xi Jinping for seconds.
In addition to saying hello to President Xi, I talked about how we need to keep our officials and teams working together to try and create constructive dialogue.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden met with Xi for 4 hours. The two leaders agreed to continue to cooperate and compete while pursuing their economic aims, a strategy Canada will also follow. But unlike Biden, Trudeau did not call Xi a dictator.
He's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
We can get into all sorts of different definitions. The fact is, he's not running a democracy. It's an authoritarian state.
The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, Australia, Brunei, Fiji.
Our closest ally also cut us out of a Washington-led initiative to bolster trade with India. 13 APEC nations were invited to join, but not Canada. It comes amid tensions over the Prime Minister's allegations that the Indian government was involved in the killing of a Sikh activist on Canadian soil.
And if America leaves us on the outside of something as important to them as the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, it suggests that they didn't want us there.
Trudeau did have FaceTime with 6 other APEC leaders, including Japan and Australia, but no announcements came out of those meetings.
This trip is about engaging constructively with partners across the Indo-Pacific for the benefit of Canadians. If you don't think that doing good work with people across the Indo-Pacific is news, well, that's a reflection the media has to take.
At this year's summit, the Americans have stabilized their relationship with China and strengthened their ties with India. But Canada's relationship with those same 2 nations remains on the rocks. Judy Trinh, CTV News, San Francisco.
The largest bust of cocaine and methamphetamine in Toronto police history was put on display today. Hundreds of kilograms of drugs seized as part of a 3-month investigation. But tonight there are questions about the dent this will actually make in the market. CTV's Beth McDonnell reports.
In all, the drugs seized weigh more than 990 kilograms and have a street value of $90 million. Towering on the table and floor, blocks upon blocks of packaged cocaine and dozens of bags of crystal methamphetamine.
It is the single largest seizure of crystal methamphetamine and powder cocaine in the history of the Toronto Police Service.
This October, after a 3.5-month investigation, members of the Toronto Police Organized Crime Enforcement Drug Squad and Organized Crime Task Force executed several search warrants, along with an interception at the border. 7 people, all from the GTA, face numerous trafficking charges. Officers say the people arrested are alleged to be runners or high-level runners of the illegal drugs in criminal organizations. Police say drugs like this come from the south into Canada from the U.S. and were destined for the streets of Toronto and beyond. Their presence would inflict significant damage from a public safety standpoint and to those suffering from addictions.
I'm going to suggest that this is all high-level purity, and to your point, it would be added later. So we know that crystal, cocaine, mixed with fentanyl, other opioid analogs, et cetera, that's where the toxicity comes in. And that's where the danger to our public lies.
We have seen no relationship between these drug busts and the actual contaminants and opioids and other drugs that are circulating in the drug market.
Dan Werb questions where the evidence is on busts making a difference in the drug market. For years, he's done work evaluating the impact of Toronto's drug checking service, which studies what's in street drugs.
The more pressure you impose on the market, the more the market accelerates and innovates to avoid that pressure. You know, we've seen a legal drug market that shifted from heroin to fentanyl. Fentanyl is, magnitudes more potent.
Werb says it goes beyond police to end the overdose crisis, arguing the government has a responsibility to regulate the market and take it away from drug trafficking organizations. Beth McDonnell, CTV News, Toronto.
He was powerful, connected, and today Gregory Woolley was gunned down in a parking lot. A figure in Montreal organized crime for decades, Woolley's death is escalating fears of more violence to come. CTV's Olivia O'Malley reports.
Reputed influential organized crime figure Gregory Woolley was killed in broad daylight, according to CTV News sources. The Sûreté du Québec says local police received reports of gunfire in this Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu parking lot near a CLSC around 10:30 this morning.
When they arrived, a man in his 50s was transported to the hospital where he was declared dead.
Provincial police have taken over the investigation. While they are not confirming the victim's identity, the death, they say, may be linked to organized crime.
Gregory Woolley was one of the most fascinating and powerful members of Montreal's organized crime scene.
Investigative journalist Julian Scher says Woolley was a rare figure in the underworld. Scher says the 51-year-old was associated with the Hells Angels and Maurice Montboucher during the 1990s biker wars, as well as the Italian mafia and street gangs.
He was a black member of Hells Angels support group called the Rockers, when the Hells Angels usually don't accept non-whites. He was tied to Vito Rizzuto, the godfather of the mafia.
Scher says Woolley had the smarts to rise to the top. In 2018, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison for gangsterism and drug trafficking, but was released on bail in 2020.
He was powerful. So somebody equally powerful decided to take him out.
Police are still looking for a shooter who they say fled in a black SUV. Shortly after the shooting, a burned-out vehicle was found in Montreal, and police are looking into a possible link with the death.
Est énorme, c'est majeur au sein du crime organisé montréalais.
Daniel Reynaud is the police and organized crime reporter at La Presse and says Woolley was considered among the top organized crime members in Montreal.
Il y aura sûrement des suites à ça.
Reynaud says there will likely be repercussions following Woolley's death, and experts believe it could be the start of a potentially violent period ahead. Olivia O'Malley, CTV News, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu.
Doctors are sounding the alarm about the rise in measles cases. Thought to be all but eradicated in many countries, several leading health organizations say measles is making a staggering comeback, and children are bearing the brunt of the highly contagious virus. CTV's Alison Bamford reports.
What should be a rare disease thanks to immunizations is picking up steam around the world. Measles typically start with a fever, cough, or runny nose, with the telltale rash appearing days after the first symptoms.
Measles is the most infectious virus that's known to man.
Stats from the World Health Organization show large measles outbreaks recorded in 37 countries last year. As a result, global cases jumped 18% to 9 million, resulting in 136,000 deaths, mostly among children in low-income countries. In Canada, the latest federal data shows 3 active cases of measles in the country. 10 cases have been reported all year. That's up from a total of 3 cases in 2022 and 0 reported in 2021. Experts say most of Canada's cases are imported into the country by travelers.
The key thing here is to prevent secondary transmission within the country and obviously provide impeccable care to people who are landing in Canada with measles infections.
The disease is highly preventable with 2 doses of vaccine typically administered as routine childhood vaccinations. But the CDC says the staggering increase in cases is not unexpected given years of declining vaccination rates. Doctors believe vaccine hesitancy brought on by the pandemic is a contributing factor.
We really have a lot of work to do to convince people of the safety of these vaccines. And certainly there's a long history of measles vaccines being given and being well tolerated.
While measles can be deadly, experts say even for those who survive, the effects are far-reaching. The disease can damage a person's immune system and pre-existing immune memory, which means other illnesses could be that much harder to fight off. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Coming up, what phones are doing to kids' brains.
Children were on screens for
as long as 13 hours a day.
Anxiety, depression, and calls for kids to put down the device. Plus, touchdown in Hamilton as Grey Cup weekend gets underway. There's a new warning tonight about screen time. Researchers say spending hours scrolling through social media is taking a long-term toll on young people's mental health. CTV's Garrett Berry reports.
It's no secret that many teenagers are hooked on their phones, but new Canadian data is surprising even researchers.
Parents were reporting that their children were on screens for, on average, about 6 hours a day, with some parents reporting their children were on screens for as long as 13 hours a day.
This was at the start of the pandemic, when school shutdowns forced classrooms online. But researcher Emma Dearden said 3 years later, screen time is still very high.
There are children who are checking their phone constantly, that this is activating brain regions involved in reward, but also punishment.
New research from Western University highlights high screen time is correlated with anxiety and depression in school-aged children, some more than others.
We found that some children were hit very hard during the pandemic, and our early research is now pointing to some children who may have mental health issues that have been undiagnosed.
For pediatricians like Dr. Michelle Ponte, this is further evidence for what they see in their office every day.
We're seeing anxious kids, depressed kids. We're seeing kids with body image issues and eating disorders walk through our office doors every single day.
She's part of the Canadian Pediatric Society's Digital Health Task Force, who today called on the federal government to step in.
It's much bigger than the individual parent and child and family. It's much bigger than that. So we're really calling on policymakers to have tighter regulations and restrictions on what apps are appropriate for kids.
As for steps that parents can take right now to try to reduce their children's screen time, Dr. Ponte suggests try sticking to one strategy, like taking phones out of bedrooms. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Still ahead, how low can you go?
Looking for deals, that's it. Just like checking all the Black Friday sales.
Many holiday shoppers looking for a hard bargain in tough times. 'Tis the season of giving, but many Canadians are adjusting their holiday budgets with inflation and the cost of living still high. CTV's Scott Hurst has more.
The top item on consumers' wish list this time of year, value.
We're cutting back a lot.
Inflation and interest rates are limiting holiday spending cheer.
Shoppers are edgy and uneasy, and they're going to be doing a lot of different little things to try and stretch the budget as far as they can go.
Shoppers are making a list, checking it twice, and realizing there's not much left to go around.
Day-to-day expenditures have gone through the roof.
Things are tough these days, and inflation is just causing to close our pockets.
Retailers are expecting consumers to scale back their spending. A new report on the Holiday Retail Outlook shows analysts are expecting an 11% drop in spending, with more than 7 in 10 shoppers hyper-focused on scanning for sales.
This year, we're seeing people acknowledge that in the climate we're in, we're not likely to spend as much.
So with consumers keeping a closer eye on every loonie, retailers will have to do more to convince them to give up their hard-earned dollars. Black Friday deals are already out there, but the stores may be limited with how low they can go.
We've come to know that the door crashers are not going to be every item in store. It's a limited number, but they're expecting some deals.
Bracing to pay more, shoppers will have to be savvy and selective.
Looking for deals, that's it. Just like checking all the Black Friday sales.
And that means putting in the work, going to more stores or visiting more websites to find the lowest prices. Scott Hurst, CTV News, Toronto.
Formula One is taking over Las Vegas this weekend. The world-famous strip transformed into a track ahead of Saturday's late-night race. An estimated $500 million has been spent to get Vegas ready for its first Grand Prix in 41 years. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Practice was interrupted late last night when Carlos Sainz Jr.'s Ferrari hit a water valve cover and repairs had to be made to the track. The underside of Sainz' Ferrari also had significant damage. After the break, countdown to kickoff. Hamilton gets set to host the biggest football spectacle in the nation. This weekend marks the 110th Grey Cup, but before kickoff on Sunday, there are plenty of festivities to take in as football fanatics flock to Hamilton, Ontario. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports.
In the city affectionately known as the Hammer, football is in their DNA.
I can't tell. Who do you support?
If you have to guess.
Welcome to Grey Cup weekend in Canada's Steel City, where fans from all corners of the country are congregating.
I'm from Gladstone, Manitoba.
To bond over their love of pigskin and an old CFL pastime.
Anybody but the Argonauts.
Nowhere can I wear a button like this and not get into a fight.
Argos! Hamilton just hosted the Grey Cup in 2021, and some may be wondering why they're getting it yet again. Well, the answer is quite simple. It was in the midst of the pandemic, and they didn't get to host a proper celebration.
It's a party.
You're here for it.
Yeah.
Inside the fan zone is where you'll find the Calgary Grey Cup Committee, who travel to each championship weekend to cook up sausages and pancakes. Cy Adley has been flipping flapjacks for 48 years.
You spent half your life making pancakes at each Grey Cup.
I've made a lot.
What's the secret?
Good stove, good batter.
And good company.
I'm in Australia right now for work, and I came back specifically so I didn't miss this.
For father and son duo Kevin and Barry Ryan, Grey Cup weekend marks an annual pilgrimage.
You took your dad to the Grey Cup in 2001 in Montreal.
Yeah.
And you've been going ever since.
Yes.
2 decades of cups and counting.
2002, so we've been to everyone.
You're running out of leg space.
There's still a game to be played on Sunday when the Montreal Alouettes lock horns with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on the gridiron at Tim Hortons Field.
Did you fly from Winnipeg, Neil?
We did the drive. We drove through the States 24 hours straight.
For many here, this weekend is about football, but it's also about coming together as a country for a cup of good cheer.
It's getting to see part of the country, just mingling with fans who love this game.
Doesn't matter who's playing. Everyone's wearing their team colors and here for a good time. It's Canada.
Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Hamilton.
All right, that is it for us tonight. I'm Heather Wright for Omar and all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Heather Butts will be here tomorrow. Good night and have a great weekend.